Not long after parkour was brought to the UK, outdoor parks built specifically for the sport started popping up all over the nation. And in 2011, a small park was opened which would eventually become the largest free-to-use outdoor park in the whole of the UK. And it's in a place you've probably not heard of, Coatbridge. Publicly advertised for its grand industrial heritage and strong community spirit, but actually known for having a lot of rough areas and a fairly high crime rate. But despite this, the building of Coatbridge Parkour Park was a step in the right direction to supporting the youth and the result of what happens when local authorities actually listen to the parkour community. So join me as we look at building Coatbridge, a parkour story. The story starts in 2003 with three skaters, Pete McKee, Gavin Gray, and David Rice. They spent their days skating all over Coatbridge, through the high street, and playing tag on top of the school roof with other friends. On one of these occasions, one of their friends mentioned that they'd seen a film about French guys jumping across rooftops much like they were doing when playing tag. This piqued the interest of Gavin and Pete, but after some searching they were unable to find the film. 2 years later, Pete was off school one day and happened to see Jump Britain, the sequel to Jump London, the film about French guys jumping across rooftops. Pete and Gavin felt inspired, watching these young men leap across rooftops and glide over obstacles so freely. And so began their transition from skating to parkour. A year into their parkour fixation, Pete, Gavin, and Rab McNeil started to get a lot of bad press in the Coatbridge and Airdrie Advertiser. Rooftops across Coatbridge were getting damaged and vandalised, and the only evidence of who did it were the online videos of them training on those very rooftops. Pete contacted the advertiser, telling them it wasn't them that had damaged the rooftops. It wasn't in the Traceur's code to damage the areas they were training on. But the press, and therefore the public, were adamant that it was parkour damaging the rooftops. So if it wasn't them, then it was the people watching their videos. Not long after this, while training at one of their regular ground level spots, the group were approached by two people. They were local youth workers who were intrigued by parkour and recognized it as a way to help get young people off of the street, out of antisocial behavior, and to focus their energy to something both creative and healthy. Pete, Gavin, and Rab leapt at the opportunity to work with the youth workers and to bring parkour to the youngsters of Coatbridge. "What do you need to run these classes?" asked the youth workers. And the answer was fairly simple: a hall and equipment. In no time at all, these requests were sorted, and Coatbridge Parkour was established as a not-for-profit, community-focused organisation. Young people across Coatbridge attended the classes, and parkour started spreading throughout the town. But even with this, the rooftops, one in particular, the chemists, were still getting damaged. And despite previously doing a piece on how parkour was actually a good thing, the Coatbridge and Airdrie Advertiser continued to blame the damage on the parkour classes. And this is when the police got involved, but not in the way that you think. These parkour classes may have been run by the parkour trio, but at every classes, 2 youth workers were there, and often members of the local police force would come and watch, chat to the youth workers, and join in on the weekly, monthly, and yearly meetings. At one of these meetings, the issue of the chemist roof was raised, and Pete explained, as he had previously done so to the press, that it wasn't them vandalizing the rooftops. Sure, tracers went up there, but it was against their nature to destroy the spots they were using. Everyone knew it was a rough area, and these rooftops were easily accessible regardless of whether you did parkour or not. There was a literal staircase leading up to them. So the officers asked Coatbridge Parkour what they needed to ensure the risk of tracers going onto those roofs were at least minimalized? And the answer again was simple: a designated place to practice parkour freely at all times. And phase 1 of Coatbridge Parkour Park began. At this point in time, 2009, parkour parks were not really a thing. Parkour was still waiting to be recognised as an official sport, so therefore there were no parkour park guidelines or builders. Pete was approached by a man called Ross Dunn, whose job title was Play Imagineer. It was his job to take people's play park and equipment ideas and turn them into a reality. He was keen to help Coatbridge Parkour and add a parkour park to his list of completed projects. After finding the perfect spot in West End Park, Ross and the coaches started designing the best equipment possible to install in the park. They chose 4 unique pieces of equipment which would encourage users to utilise as many different parkour skills as possible. After raising a total of £35,000, with £9,000 being gifted from children in need, £4,000 from Coatbridge Local Action Fund, and the rest from Coatbridge Parkour, the police, and North Lanarkshire Council Community Information and Learning, the park was built and in June 2011 opened to the public. The creation of Coatbridge Parkour Park was a huge success, with more and more young people dedicating their time to learning parkour. But despite this massive step in promoting parkour and providing a designated space for young people to train, socialise and leap around, there was one major issue with the park. Everything was so spread out. Despite this being a parkour park, it had been built with play park regulations. This meant that if a certain piece of equipment was a certain height, it had to be a certain distance away from another piece of equipment. So the park was great for specific classes or conditioning sessions, but not much else. An expansion was needed. Due to lengthy discussions with the council, multiple funding source delays, nothing was done with the park's expansion until 2013. By this time, parkour was becoming more established. Parkour UK had been set up, more and more parks were popping up all over England and even in Inverness, and more clubs were founded and started running classes. FreeMove, an organisation specialising in designing and building parkour parks and equipment, was now established and eager to help Coatbridge Parkour with phase 2 of the park. Pete, Lewis O'Keefe, Ryan McSorley, Connor Smiley, and a number of other Coatbridge Parkour coaches sat down with Marcus, owner of FreeMove, and flicked through a whole load of different equipment design magazines until they'd found the perfect pieces to fit around what was already installed at Coatbridge. The entire of phase 2 costs £111,000, with funding from Legacy 2014 Active Places Fund, Waste Recycling Environmental Limited, or WREN, North Lanarkshire Council Local Development Programme, Culture NL, Commonwealth Fund, and Coatbridge Parkour. It was officially opened on the 18th of July 2014 and since then has been in constant use by freerunners and tracers all over Scotland and members of the public. So that is how Scotland's first and the UK's largest official parkour park was built. Although there haven't been classes in Coatbridge for some time, the park did what it was supposed to do and gave the youth of Coatbridge a place to socialise, stay out of trouble and learn parkour. Even without the classes or even the knowledge of the sport, the park today enables children to learn about assessing risk by exploring the equipment and getting creative with the way they move around it. A successful project indeed. Thank you for watching this documentary on the creation of the fabulous Coatbridge Parkour Park. I hope you enjoyed it and have realised there is a lot more to the creation of this park than just the council building one. Join me next time where we will be looking at the best parkour films of 2024. See you around.